Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and I was putting together a video of our group's table rules, which are the rules that have evolved or been put in place for our gaming group. Now, it doesn't matter whatever RPG it is we're playing, but if you're seated at our table, these are the rules for our group and how we've played together for the past few decades. Most of them are pretty simple, like how we cover things like cell phones, or how we cover things like somebody who's missed several sessions, but one topic ended up just being too big to put into that video because it's just a little bit too much to it. There's kind of a little subtlety to it, so before I can do that video, I first needed to do this video, which is how we handle CVC, or character versus character conflicts. A lot of people call this player versus player, which is classically what we used to call it, but your players are the people around the table. The characters are the people inside the game, and I find that it's very important that you differentiate the two. If two players aren't getting along, that is one problem, and I've done videos about problem players or handling player conflicts, which that can absolutely kill a game. But this video is about when the wizard and the barbarian get into a fight, when the conflict is simply just within the game world itself and not necessarily around the gaming table. Now, when I first started getting into gaming and we were a bunch of middle schoolers, so our dungeon master set up a very hard no CVC rule, because he knew that otherwise, we were just going to set every game on fire by releasing our youthful angst and murdering each other in-game. And he was right to do that. We were immature, and we would have been prone to fighting and bullying inside the game. Grudges would have lingered, tempers would have exploded, and it not only would have ruined the game, but possibly could have ruined some of our friendships. Years later, when I moved away to college and I started up my own gaming group, I maintained the same no character versus character rule for my table for all the same reasons. However, even though the rule was technically no CVC fighting, we also understood the large and unspoken list of exceptions and kind of made it more of a guideline than a hard rule. And while technically I suppose it is still a table rule for our group, it's not anything that we've had to address or discuss in well over 15 years, and the type of plots and adventures and games that we play now is very different than what we used to play back then. So let's go ahead and talk about that. In our gaming group, our characters might not get along. They might argue, they might have opposing agendas, hell, they might just dislike one another, but they're still in a situation where they need to work together for some sort of common goal. And that can be really fun and really interesting. In my experience, character versus character conflicts only work if they follow just a few simple rules. First, it needs to be clearly the characters. If either party is coming at it with the point of view that this is between the players, or they could hold a grudge against the player because of what happened during this conflict, that can quickly spin out of control into hurt feelings between these two players or even the other members of the group. So feel free to clearly state and check in that this is not a personal thing. Don't assume that everybody knows this. Be 100% clear here. Also, it's pretty good just to go ahead and explain what the PC's thought process behind this is. Okay, so my character knows that Bryce held out on us earlier with some valuable information that we could have used, so he doesn't trust your character one bit, so he demands to see what's inside Bryce's bag. But you and I are cool, right? Oh no, you and I are totally cool, but Marvin and Bryce? Not so much. Now, some might complain how this spoils their immersion by having an out-of-character check-in, which, sure, in concept, that sounds pretty cool that you don't do anything to break immersion, but for me, I would rather break immersion for a moment just to be 100% sure that no one is actually upset and isn't acting whenever we're doing this conflict. Next, the time and place are appropriate. If the group is in the middle of an adventure and one character takes that moment to screw over another character, or a sudden fight breaks out between two of the PCs, that can leave the group at a serious disadvantage because now they have less resources because the healer is dead or unconscious, some of our spells and ammo have been spent, or just simply the rest of the players have to deal with this issue going on when they were planning on spending their session, overcoming the adventure itself, and that can quickly sink the game. We've seen this a lot in action movies where once the job is done and everyone's back to some safe location, two of our heroes just go into blows with each other as about something that happened during the job itself, but they at least waited until they were safe. So if two characters have a disagreement, they can just simply go, "Oh, this is not over. Once we get out of here and back to the ship, it is you and me." That is great because the game can still move forward. The players are acknowledging that the group's game is the current priority, and their in-character beef can wait until it's no longer detracting from everyone else's game. But isn't that metagaming, you ask? Well, yeah, of course it is. And I've talked about this before, how there is good metagaming, so even if you feel that you're totally in character and justified by attacking and robbing another player character, if you sync the game with CVC and ruin everyone's fun, then don't be surprised when the group either falls apart or you just find out that you're not invited back to the next session. If you can't make your character work with the rest of the party or hold off on the in-character drama until a suitable time, then really that's on you. Next, keep it non-lethal. If you want to have a scene where your character gets so mad that they throw aside their sword and punch their teammate in the face, then we get into some fisticuffs, that is a different matter than hitting them with an axe or just shooting them in the face. If the player characters choose to duel one another for non-lethal damage or until first blood, that's something that becomes a dramatic bonding moment between them. That's something that we can build on and something that we can grow from. But if your assassin cuts their throat with a poisoned dagger, then that is a whole other thing. And even if both parties are 100% consenting with the thought that their player characters are going to be killing each other, my experience is that most of the time they really aren't 100% consenting or 100% cool with the idea that their character could die at the hands of another. Someone is going to carry a grudge. At least someone is very likely to carry a grudge, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the player who had their character die. It could just be one of the other players around the table who kind of holds a grudge over this. And even then, I have watched that non-lethal clause of ours get abused. We once had a D&D monk character who was constantly hitting and tripping the other PCs who irritated or disagreed with them, and the other player was using that, well, hey, I'm not using lethal damage, so it's perfectly okay. But it was causing issues with the game because first, it was definitely a PvP thing. The player was bullying the other players, and that line between CVC and PvP had crossed, and we all knew it had been crossed, even though nobody said it aloud. And second, it wasn't always consensual, like an agreed upon duel or anything. No, the monk was just regularly assaulting the other player characters. Now, thankfully, that monk did not last that long, and the player ended up leaving the group a few months after that, so that was the last time we ever had to deal with any sort of issue like that. Now, one clause that thankfully never got used in our game is, while I said that there's no lethal character versus character fighting in my game, an exception that I reserved was unless they deserve it. If the barbarian burns the wizard's spell book, or the thief steals the fighter's magic sword and runs off in the middle of the night, or some case where the character is intentionally trying to destroy the party, or some other just dick move behavior, all the stuff that I covered in my roleplay terrorist video with a whole, that's what my character would do as they set the game on fire just for kicks. I've always felt that the victim player character, if they kill the offending player character, that's an appropriate response to that, because essentially at that point it's self-defense. But as I've gotten older and we've all matured, I really don't even want to play that part out. If the game has already devolved to the point that players should just be killing each other because one of them's trying to sink the game, I would much rather just stop the game, talk it out, even boot a toxic player if we have to, than just continue along that path, because no real good is going to come from doing that. But thankfully, again, we've never had to do that, but that was always a clause that I had, and I've kind of since retired that clause because I don't even want to do that. Personally, my players and I prefer cooperative games where our characters are working together toward a common goal. That's what we enjoy playing, and we can roleplay it in a way where even if the characters don't get along or they do have competing agendas, they're going to find a way to let those differences, not cause the game to crash, because all of us understand that fun is our overall goal, and we're going to have more fun if we're working together as a party. So what we prefer to have versus, a character versus character fighting is friendly rivalries. A classic example of this is the Gimli versus Legolas, where, they all have their competitions, their jabs at one another, even say how much they dislike each other. They might even legitimately dislike each other, but in the end, they're side-by-side brothers in arms. And with a scream, Dweebles falls back into the pit as the monster closes in. Oh, I am so dead. Damn, I'm always having to save your ass. Okay, then I'm going to unshoulder my axe and jump right back down there between him and the monster. Another exception is some one-shot games, where the character agendas might come into direct conflict with one another, and then we have betrayal or some other character versus character conflict. I've talked about one-shots before and brought up how they're frequently exceptions to many of the things that we have whenever we're doing a campaign-style game. But even in campaigns, campaign finales can often be exceptions. Now, I don't mean the finale as a result of the characters going head-to-head with one another. Something like that could end your campaign a little early at any time. time, but I'm talking about when the campaign storyline is wrapping up and all the players know that this is about to be the big ending for everything, and it's at this point, right at the end, we might have our character showdowns or sudden but inevitable betrayals. Now, one trick that I've done a couple times with Cyberpunk 2020 campaigns is shortly before the final mission and the player characters are about to finish up whatever the big plot is, I might have an NPC contact one or two of the player characters on the side and make them a really big and tempting offer if they betray the rest of the party. And it's been several years since I did this one, but the last time that I did it, I had several NPCs contact various PCs in the group, making them their own little tempting offers, and then I just waited to see what would happen. So we had like 6 PCs in the group, and 4 of them were given these secret offers, and they were also secret from the other players, so not even the other players knew this was going on. And honestly, I didn't even know what they were going to do. I was just kind of like wanting to throw a little temptation at them just to see what would happen. So when the player characters, they finished the big job at the end of the campaign, they killed the bad guy and they stole the super valuable MacGuffin, they all made their escape from the bad guy's secret lair. Now, normally, this is where I probably would have just ended the campaign as our heroes are riding off into the sunset, and when we could have kind of given a little summary closing how all this ended up. But this time, I just kind of left the camera rolling for a bit as they were headed towards their secret rendezvous where the NPC fixer was waiting aboard a yacht with some champagne bottles ready to go. And just before they got to the rendezvous, that is when the guns came out. And well, no one made it to the rendezvous. Maybe I could make a war story video out of that, but, with a title that's something like, why you don't use grenades inside a mini-sub, I think everybody would get a pretty good idea of how that campaign ended. Anyway, that is my opinion of character versus character conflicts. I'm not a fan of them, except for when I am. But even then, only as long as the time and the place are appropriate, it fits whatever type of game it is that we're playing, that it's handled in a suitable way by the players and the game master and everybody around the table, and it's clearly something that is only between the characters rather than the players themselves. Because if CVC is done poorly, that can quickly escalate into a player versus player situation, and that can quickly destroy a game. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews, or how-tos, or more RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, amigos, y'all have a great day. Probably the best game out there for competitive yet cooperative play where character versus character conflict is encouraged but has to be done smart is Paranoia. Man, we really ought to play that again sometime.